board, and we'll start talking about non-electronic acoustic modifications. You might be wondering what the Sam Hill that is. That really concerns this stuff: mold and the ear hook of a hearing aid.
Now, I'm sorry, Ted, was there notes for that? Because when I went, all it had was the psychoacoustics. Did you find notes for it, Lizzie?
I haven't checked yet.
Because I always like to print the notes so that I can write.
Oh, of course.
And the only ones that I found were for this section, they were the psychoacoustic notes still. And I'm like,
wow.
Plus we got.
I think I can upload those. I mean, I know if they're not uploaded, I will certainly upload them.
Okay, if you would, that would be
they
great.
are. It's like I think it would be in Unit 7. It's called Unit 7. It's the very last unit. But right after this, Zoom session, otherwise, what I could do, I'm thinking too, I could upload them and then resume this Zoom session and come back to it. I could do that too, but then that would mean you guys would be having to print it up, and it might be a kind of a hassle. I'll tell you what, we'll do this Zoom session, and then I'm going to upload the notes and PowerPoint right afterwards. Okay?
Okay, because I'm going over on my other thing here, and all that's showing on the lessons is the last one. That's not right. Let's go.
Have a look. Yeah, go ahead.
That's acoustics. No,
yeah,
that's not the right one. Let's see. Let me go back to lessons.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll wait for you.
Acoustics.
Yeah.
Psychoacoustics masking is the last one it shows, and it shows it as Unit 6. And it shows these lectures as it 425 and 5.2, quiz due 5.7. And when you upload the lecture material, that's the same stuff that we went over last week is what's coming up. So
okay, all right, I'll look into it right away. I'll check it out.
Okay,
because I will show you now the PowerPoints, and I'll share screen and show you the notes that you should have had. Okay. All right, here goes. This would be the notes. Non-electronic acoustic modifications, and this would be the PowerPoint. Okay, showing you ear molds and all of that. So that's the kicker here. All right, basically, have a scrap piece of paper beside you, and scrawl notes that way, I guess, and then I'll make it my business to upload both of these immediately after today's session. How's that?
Okay.
All right. And then I think what I'll do is I'll go on that remind, that thing we have for the class, and I'll send out to the class too to make sure that before they listen to this Zoom session that they print up the notes so that they don't have to go through what you two are going through. All right. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So here we go. I'll scroll down here, and we'll talk about non-electronic acoustic modifications. Basically, there's three things. If you look at the bottom of this page that I'm showing you here, there's three things: venting, damping or filtering, and horns. Those are the three things that we're going after, okay? And that's what we're going to be describing today. Let's work to the top of the page, and I'm going to highlight this sentence where it says, non-electronic acoustic modifications. In English, that means anything that does not deal with the battery, that does not deal with the electronics inside the hearing aids. It's the ear mold and the ear hook and things like that, okay? But it is a lost art. That's why I've got that highlighted in gray. Most hearing aids today are digital, which allows for an amazing amount of frequency shaping. For low frequency emphasis, high frequency emphasis, you have it. But in the days of old, when hearing aids were analog, they weren't as flexible. They were still pretty good. And I'll show you something here. I'll stop sharing and I'll show you exactly what I mean. See this hearing aid here? If you open up the back, You see that? Those are what you call trimmers, trim pots, trim potentiometers. Think of like a light switch in a living room that you can go like a dimmer switch. Okay, you took a tiny little screwdriver. I'll see if I've got one of those guys. A tiny little I don't right here. Yeah, here it is. Tiny little screwdriver like this, and you'd turn the screws in the back of the hearing aid. You'd turn the screws to give low frequency emphasis, high frequency emphasis, mid frequency emphasis, so you could shape the frequency response of the hearing aid, but it wasn't quite as tight as with digital. I mean, you could do it, but hearing aids didn't have the flexibility that today's hearing aids do, because today's hearing aids have all these different channels, right? This frequency channel, this one, this one, this one, so you can raise or lower any, here I can flip you the bird, you know, you can raise or lower any particular channel at will in today's hearing aid software. In the old days, you couldn't quite do it that exquisitely or finely. So what you'd use was a screwdriver, and you turn these little trimmers in the back of the hearing aid. This one's got 4 different adjustments, you know, and then here would be you close the little back door, and then you've got your volume control here, and you got your on-off switch here, you know, basically the hearing aids. So in those, that's why I say that it's a lost art, because today most people have lost their skill at doing it. But still, it's a non-electronic modifications are techniques when used fitting quite inflexible analog hearing aids. Have a read with me. They help shape hearing aid frequency responses. Any good HIS should have a handle on them. Besides, implementing these principles is cheap. Now, when I'm showing you these trimmers, this thing here, that's electronics. I'm changing the electronics of the hearing aids. I'm forcing the lows or the treble or the mid frequencies. I'm electronically adjusting with this silly little screwdriver, okay? But past the limitations of that, you could go further. You could put, and I'll take this off, what showing you this is way better. Inside at the top of the hearing aid, I took off the ear hook. I took it off. And inside here, you're going to see, this is the top is the microphone, the top little circle, and the bottom circle is the receiver, which twists onto the ear hook, as you know. And then the sound goes through here and into the guy's ear. So the mic picks up the sound, hearing aid amplifies the sound, and then the speaker is in that second gold thing, sending the sound through the tube. Now, what a lot of people did was they took off the ear hook, and inside, just in front of the receiver, they stuck a tiny little screen, and that screen was called a filter. And what the filter did was it took away the peaks in a frequency response. Instead of having a frequency response that looked like teeth, it smoothed things. It reduced feedback. It made the sound a little bit less harsh, a little bit more clear. Another thing that hearing aids all did was they had something in the mold. They had a vent, and you can see that second hole. See how you got one hole is for the sound to go through. That's the big one. That's the tube going into the big hole here. But if you look really closely, you can see there's a second hole. It's hard to see. I'm going to show you with my screwdriver. Where's that little guy here? Things are never where you want them. Dang. Where's that stupid? Here it is. The second little hole is right here. See, I'm holding it like this. Have a look. See that second? See where I got the screwdriver jammed in? And it's hard to show right in front of here, but that is a vent. So hearing aids had a vent as well. Why did they have a vent? The vent was done. I'll show you in an ITE. See that little hole in the bottom? This is an ITE, and you're looking at that little hole at the bottom. That's a vent. And if I turn it this way so you can see it, you'll see 2 holes. See that? One's for the sound, where the speaker is the receiver, but the second one, this big one here, is the vent. Where is it? Now here. Hard to show on a computer, but this bottom one here, the large one, that's a hole, and it's continuous with that hole. It's literally a tunnel built in the hearing aid. Why? Because when you plug your ear, go ahead and plug one ear, plug an ear, and now hum. You hear your voice louder in the ear that you plug, don't you? Okay, you hear yourself louder when you plug that ear. Same thing would happen if you stuck a hearing aid in your ear. It's going to plug up your ear. You're going to hear your voice too loud. So what do? They put a hole in the hearing aid called a vent. And the vent lets the low frequencies out. That very thing, when you plug your ear, okay, and you hear your own voice really loud, that's called the occlusion effect. OCCLUSION, occlusion effect. So when you plug up your ear with your finger and you talk, you hear your voice louder in the ear that's plugged. And that's normal. I mean, that's a normal thing. So a vent is a non-acoustic or a non-electronic acoustic modification. Same with the filter stuck in front of the receiver to smooth out the frequency response. That's also a non-electronic acoustic modification. And the third one is really kind of cool. I'll show you. It's kind of, it's a little bit difficult, but maybe I've got an example of it here. The third one is a horn. Let's see if I can pull that guy, open up this little box here, and I wonder if I've got an example of a horn. I'm not 100% sure, but at any rate. But here's another. Well, see this hearing aid? This one shows you the two holes much better. The top one is for the sound. The bottom one is a vent. Okay? And when you're looking at it this way, two holes. So anyway, the horn is when you have a tube. Let's see if I've got a number 13 tubing here that's just by itself. Here's a horn. Got it. See, this tube would go into, this tube would go into the ear mold, much like this ear mold, okay, just like that. But at the end of the tube, watch this, the end of the tube gets wider. You see that? The top end of the tube is number 13 tubing, but the number 13 tubing has a diameter, if you're looking at it dead on, a diameter of about 2 millimeters, okay? But look at the horn. Look at this. The horn has a wider diameter. Now, why do you think the tube would widen out like a horn? There's a reason why. I'll show you why. You will hear why. I'm going to take this piece of paper from my bank. I'm going to just roll it up and make, you get useless mail all the time from your banks, this account or that account, and it kind of goes in the garbage. So I'll make this one useful. Look at this. Here's a horn. Yeah, I just made a horn. When I talk like this through a horn, what parts of my speech are emphasized? The high frequencies. A horn amplifies highs. If I talk into the horn backwards, watch this. I'm going to talk into the horn backwards. Now my speech is all muffled. What does a backward horn do? It cuts off the highs. This is how elderly people hear, by the way. This is like presbycusis. I'm imitating the way elderly people hear with presbycusis. If I talk like this, that's the way Mrs. McGillicuddy, who's 75, that's the way she hears. That's the way she hears because she can't hear the high frequencies. So if you start making background noise while I'm talking like that, you're going to have a heck of a time hearing what I'm saying. Anyway, in a horn, much like I'm showing you right here, in a mold, okay, the horn emphasized the high frequencies of speech. So now you can hear the letters S, F, TH, CH, church, speech, and that's what a horn naturally just gives for free. You're getting high frequencies for free. Non-electronically, non-digitally. How much does a horn cost in an ear mold? About $3. Okay? So that's why I say it's a lost art. Hearing instrument specialists used to modify hearing aids and ear molds like this all the time. Then the digital era came in, and what we did was a frontal lobotomy on ourselves, and we don't have to do that anymore. Now we just push buttons. Okay, but that's this is just in acoustics. It's good to have a handle on the whys and wherefores of these things. Okay, now back to share screen, and we'll look at our notes. I'm delivering this particular talk very differently than I have in the past, and the reason why is because now I've got all my little pieces and parts sitting on my desk beside me. I laid them all out last night before I went to bed. Said I'm going to do that this way this time. Okay, read from the top. Non-resonant, now look at this sentence here, resonance of your outer ear canal. Remember way back when we talk about anatomy, when we talk about acoustics. What is your ear canal? A quarter wave resonator. Your ear canal is like a cup, closed at one end, open at the other end, okay? It's an inch long. Cylinder, open at one end, so it's a quarter wave resonator. It resonates best with sound waves that are 4 times as long. Remember that? We covered quarter wave resonators. Your ear canal is 2.5 centimeters long or 1 inch long, so it's going to vibrate or resonate with sound waves that are 4 times as long. It's going to resonate with sound waves that are 4 inches long. Or you could say it's going to resonate with sound waves that are 4 times 2.5 centimeters. Either way, inches or centimeters, doesn't matter how you work it out, okay? Let's go centimeters because science works in metric. 2.5 centimeters is an inch. 4 times 2.5 is 10 centimeters. 10 centimeters is 0.1 meter. So 1 meter over 1, what frequency is sound, is wavelength is speed of sound over the frequency, right? Frequency is speed of sound over the wavelength. It's just a very, and you'll have, so 0.1 meter over 1 is equal to 340 meters per second over x, and you want to find that out. So you're going to go 1 times 340 is 340. 340 divided by 0.1, you'll see it right here, is 3,400 hertz. So the resonating frequency would be 3,400 hertz. If you did it in inches, you'd do this, okay? 4 inches over 1 is equal to 1,130 feet per second, okay, over x. And 4 inches is 0.3 feet, isn't it? Because 4 times 3 is 12 inches. A foot's 12 inches. So 0.3 over 1 is equal to 1,130 over x. And you calculate it that way. Guess what? You'll end up with 3,400 hertz again. Okay? So the resonance of your outer ear canal is around 3,400 hertz. And that's why I'm showing you this picture here. Remember this picture? Here's your ear canal resonance. Now your ear canal isn't made out of steel or glass like this cup. Your ear canal is made out of flesh and bone. And so that resonance is going to be spread out, as you can see. But always remember that resonance, okay? It's there to lift up the high frequency consonants of speech. Look at this. Here's hearing loss. Now, are both of you taking audiometry? Are you taking 130? Okay, here's an audiogram. Audiogram with mild sloping presbycusis. This person cannot hear these high frequency consonants that I'm circling here with my cursor. That's why you've got this resonance. The resonance adds about 20 decibels. So the person can hear those high frequency consonants. Okay, that's why, that helps. Now, when you've got hearing loss, okay, then this doesn't help so much anymore because the hearing loss is way worse. Okay, but still, the very fact that these high frequency sounds are soft, okay, they're softer than the low frequency vowels, so we need the outer ear canal resonance to help us better hear the high frequency consonants. And that's why our ears have this shape, because like a wine glass at Christmas, they resonate with the high frequencies of speech. All right, that's another non-electronic acoustic modification, isn't it? There's no electricity happening there. It's just the shape of the ear. Back to your notes. So when we read, you can just you'll recognize a lot of this as soon as you are able to print up these notes. Read with me. But the EAM, external auditory meatus, is made up of flesh and bone, and it's blah 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 blah. So this spreads the resonant frequencies out across from 1500 to 4000 hertz, and so the exact 3400 hertz, 3400 hertz, is spread out a bit. The peak ear canal resonance in an adult is 2700 hertz. And you should remember that. That will very likely be a final exam question. Okay? What's the peak resonance of your outer ear canal? And you go up here to this slide and you'll see it right there. 2700 hertz. The ear canal resonates generally from about 1500 hertz to about 4000 hertz. Think of it this way. This is another way to look at it. I'm going to blow up this picture and make it large. Think of it this way. If I had a speaker this far away from my right ear, and it was putting out 50 dB, okay, pretend that. And then I had a little microphone inside my ear canal, what would I measure? I'd be measuring the sound. So if I had 120, look at my cursor here, 125 hertz. Let's say if I have 125 hertz coming out of the speaker, what am I going to measure? And it's 50 dB. What am I going to measure in my ear canal? 125 hertz at 50 dB. Now I take a 250 hertz tone and I make that come out of the speaker. What am I going to measure at my ear? About 250 hertz at 50 dB. Take a 500 hertz tone at 50 dB. What am I going to measure in my ear? About 50 dB, 500 hertz at 50 dB. 1000 hertz. Have it come out of the speaker at 50. What am I going to measure inside my ear? 1000 hertz at 50. Now comes the story. 2000 hertz coming out of the speaker at 50 dB. What am I going to be measuring in my ear? Probably about 70. Because guess what? My ear is adding 20 dB now. I'm getting free resonance. It's okay? Weird, but true. 4000 hertz at 50 dB coming out of a speaker. What am I going to measure inside my ear? About 70 again. Take 8000 hertz now. 8 at 50 dB from a speaker. What am I going to measure in my ear? 50. Guess what? The resonance is gone. Okay? So that's how you think about it. There's a lift that you're getting, and it's a non-electronic acoustic modification, sheerly because of the resonance of my outer ear, just the shape. How come? It's a quarter wave resonator, like a cylinder that's open at one end, closed at the other end. That's just what those things do. Okay? Back to our notes. Okay, we're working through it. So, if I go now to here, let's look at a picture here. Let's just talk about ear. Oh yeah, here you go. Here's an ear canal. Have a look at this picture. Here's an ear canal, open ear canal. There's that resonance. But you and I don't think about it. We hear that just normal. That's just our perceived response. We don't think about that. That's just the way we walk around. Now look at the bottom one. A hearing aid is put inside the ear canal. You have now closed off the cylinder. Now it's a cup, but it's closed at both ends. So guess what happened to the frequency response? Look at the frequency response of the hearing aid, but when you put it in the guy's ear, you have lost that added resonance. That's gone now. Okay? So the hearing aid has to make up for that. because you've lost that love and feeling. It's gone, gone. Whoa, whoa, whoa. All right? This is the thing. It's a non-electronic facet of life. There's various, so a hearing aid has to provide high frequency gain for the person's high frequency hearing loss, but it also has to make up for the loss of that resonance. Weird but true. Back to our notes. 2,000 to 4,000 hertz. Oh, here it is. I even wrote that here. Hearing aid thus has to restore this lost resonance. Also make up for the hearing loss. You'd think I wrote these notes. Huh. Anyway, 2,000 to 4,000 hertz are very important for understanding what the words are. So some ear molds don't let enough highs get into an ear. For high-powered BTEs, beware of old, bogus tubing. The tubing in ear molds sometimes gets very, very narrow. I'll stop sharing. Here's an ear mold. Sometimes when people bring in a BTE, I'll screw this one back onto its ear hook here, and I'll just show you an example of what I mean. People come into the shop with the hearing aid, and the tubing from the ear hook to the mold is really old, and it's no longer nice and pliant or whatever. It's stiff, and it's gotten narrow because it's shrunk with age. You could almost crack it. That tubing is blocking high frequency sounds, because guess what? It's acting like the opposite. Where's that bank statement? Where's that useless banks? It's acting like a horn in reverse. It's taking, instead of being wide at one end like a horn, or even instead of being neutral, just like a cylinder, okay, it's gotten narrow. So now it's really tight, and it's become like this. It's become really skinny. It's pinched. And when that happens, you are blocking high frequency sounds. So you as an HIS have to say, hey, let me replace the tubing in your hearing aid. Let me replace it. And so you're going to take it off the hook. You're going to put the hearing aid down. You're going to take your pliers and yank the tube out of the mold. You're going to go to your desk, get a new tube. You're going to insert it into the mold, glue it back together. Okay, glue the tube so it's in the mold properly, like it's supposed to be. And Bob's your uncle, you'll have a new tube. But go ahead.
How often do you have to replace those tubes? I mean, because my stepdad, he has a BTE, and he said, yeah, I probably need my tubings replaced. It's been a while. And so I'm wondering, is there a time frame probably?
Yeah, it depends on the person, depends on his chemical makeup and sweat. Everybody's different. Also depends on your climate, how humid it is, how dry it is. All these factors come into play, usually though about once every year.
Okay, it's probably been
It's a simple matter too. Most HISs are pretty good at it. You learn how to do that with your hands behind your back. It's just, I've replaced tubing 1,000 times. I've even taken tubing and out of the guy's mold, and then I've made the hole in the end of the mold bigger with a Dremel drill, and then inserted a new tube that was like a horn.
Like a horn?
And then the guy goes, wow, I hear you a lot clearer. I'm saying, yeah, can you hear that better? Yeah, makes a difference. A gift for free. Cost, I don't know, $5. That's what I mean. There's certain things you can do. Okay, back to our notes here. All righty. And we only know that we can appreciate how and why this works because we've taken acoustics and we've learned what resonance is, and we've learned what highs are and what lows are and blah, 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 all of that stuff. So, all right. Ear mold types and materials. Ear mold types and materials. We're halfway down page 1 here. Let's look at ear mold types and materials now. I'll go up, up. Have you taken many ear mold impressions? Have you done this yet in labs?
No, because I don't live there where I can go to labs. They did.
Right.
I think they could have done that this weekend at labs, but I was just on video for it.
Okay. All right. Basically, you're shoving a sponge down to almost to the guy's eardrum, very close, with a little tool with a light on it. And notice that sponge has a string on it so that you're able to pull it out when you need to. Then you're going to mix up a bunch of goop, silicone stuff in your hand, and you'll put it in a syringe. They'll show you this. And then you're going to fill up the guy's ear canal and his whole concha bowl, the whole thing, and you'll let it harden for about 5 minutes. When it's hardened, you will gently wiggle the ear to let air get in behind it, and you will pull out the ear mold impression. This is a good, complete, accurate impression. The sponge is at the end to keep the material from touching the drum. And you can see the long ear, the canal, and the concha bowl. The whole thing is all there. You see, a manufacturer will make an ear mold out of the impression that you send. And if you give them too much material, good, they can always cut away. Okay, but if it's incomplete, look at this middle one. They can't do anything for you. You can't add. It's always better to give them more. So the whole impression is best because they can cut away and come at you back, and they can even make a CIC hearing aid out of that. Okay, here's a completely in canal hearing aid, right ear. Here's a completely in canal hearing aid, left ear. Okay, so these hearing aids, and I'll show you let's all just stop sharing. It's important. I think it's really to have a good grip. Here's a completely in canal hearing aid with its little tiny string at the end, so I can pull it out of my ear. Okay, and you turn it around and you can see the battery door, the little string, and you had to take an ear mold impression. You can see how the shape of the canal, it had to be made from the ear mold impression that you sent into the manufacturer. Here's a left ear, completely in canal hearing aid. Okay, with the string sticking out, the battery door again. And I even think this one here, well, it has a vent. Look at that little vent at the bottom.
Is that a vent down there at the bottom? Yeah.
Yeah. And then if I point it at you, you will see two holes again. One's the vent, one's for the sound. The little one's for the vent, and the top one is for the receiver. Venting is very, very important in hearing aids. The only person you don't use a vent for is when you've got an ear mold like this one. Look at this ear mold here. This ear mold is made out of silicone. You see how I can bend it? It's like a rubber material, whereas the most ear molds are made out of lucite, hard lucite, which is like acrylic. It's like a hard, you can hear that against my glasses, okay? Whereas this is silicone. When you've got a severe hearing loss, you're going to usually wear a silicone ear mold. The reason why is because silicone sticks to your skin and doesn't let anything out. Okay, so when you see people walking around with hearing aids and they have a kind of a rubber looking ear mold, notice there's no vent in this. Okay, or is there? I can't even see it. Nope, there's no vent. Oh yeah, there is a tiny little vent at the very bottom. I'll show you. Kind of, I can hardly even see it. It's called a pressure vent. It's just a wee little dot at the bottom. This guy's got a 80 decibel hearing loss. Huge hearing loss. He's probably wearing a great big BTE like this. Have a peek here. Great big honker. And he might even have deaf speech. He might be talking kind of like that because he can't hear the high frequency consonant. Okay, you'll hear the person. And that person will be wearing a silicone ear mold with little or no venting at all. Who cares if he's got the occlusion effect? Because he needs all the sound he can get. Okay, but a smaller ear mold for a less severe loss is called a skeleton. Look at this one. That's a skeleton. Here, this one here is full shell. This one's full shell. That's for a severe loss, made out of lucite, made out of silicone. This one's a skeleton ear mold for a less severe loss. And notice the vent is bigger too. So if you saw someone like this, you'd go, oh, you probably don't have a severe hearing loss. It's probably a moderate to severe hearing loss. It's not as bad because you didn't have to plug up the whole concha bowl to make sure that none of the sound leaked out. The hearing aid's probably less powerful. And then you can get the hearing aids of today. The hearing aids of today. Thin tube or receiver in canal hearing aid. And with its little stock ear mold, look at all the holes in that. Okay? Venting like crazy. Like crazy. Why? Because the guy probably just has a mild to moderate sensory neural loss. And probably has good hearing in the low frequencies. Good low frequency hearing. Because that's what venting is very important for. Because when you plug up your ear, your voice is louder in the low frequencies. Let's go to our notes and describe why. We're going to be talking venting first. Okay? Venting first. If I can make this crazy thing advance, I'm getting into that. This is a strange thing was, oh, here you go. This is a picture showing you molds, full shell, half skeleton, skeleton, non-occluding, you know, you're getting wider and wider in terms of your venting. That picture we covered. Let's see if I've got another picture here for you. Oh yeah, this is a picture of an ear mold impression, and your ear canal is like a dog leg. It has kind of two bends to it. One bend here and another smaller bend here. You can see the bends. Bend and here where the arrow is. Okay, believe me, I'm sending you these PowerPoints. You're going to get this, so fear not. Okay, here's the concha bowl, an ear impression showing the concha, the bends in the canal, the location of the tragus, and the helix. Types of molds. Basically, the two types you should know are full shell and skeleton, and the two materials you should know are silicone and lucite. Okay? Silicone, full shell, severe hearing loss. Lucite, skeleton, less severe hearing loss. No vent, big hearing loss. Lots of venting, less hearing loss. We'll move on down. And these are the three acoustic modifications we'll look at right here. Venting, damping, and horns. Venting is for the lows, damping is for the mids, damping means filters, and horns emphasize the highs. Let's look at here, again, venting, filters, horns, low frequency changes, mid frequency changes, high frequency changes. All of these are non-electronic acoustic modifications. And today, we no longer put, where's that big BTE again? Boy, oh boy, I wish I would stop losing things. Today, we no longer put the filters inside the tube. Okay, today, we put the filters inside the ear hook of the hearing aid itself. So here's another hearing aid I'll show you. Okay, stop sharing screen here. Here's another hearing aid, a BTE. And today the filters are put into the ear hook itself. Okay? It's no longer in the tubing as shown in that picture. They'll unscrew the ear hook and the tubing will be inside of it, or the filtering will be done inside of there. Twist this hook back on again. All kinds of BTEs floating around here. Okay. Stop sharing or start sharing again. And we'll look at that. Okay, let's talk about the venting here first. Sometimes people use select a vent. Look at this plug here. Okay, look at that plug. You could choose the size that you wanted to. They would just drill a hole in the mold, and then you could choose the size of vent that you wanted to use. If I stop sharing, I'll show you. It came on a little tree like this. Some had bigger holes, some had littler holes. You would select the one you wanted to use, and you'd shove that into the vent hole of the mold. Go ahead, Kelly.
Some type of formula for figuring out
Nope.
It's just
Great.
a trial and error?
Trial and error. Trial and error. And that because the guy would let you know when his own voice sounded too loud. Good question.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Trial and error. Select event. Weird, eh? All right. If I go to the next slide here, if this computer will let me, I can't. There you go. You could talk about, they have parallel vents, diagonal vents, external vents, all different kinds. Diagonal vents are terrible. Nobody uses them, but this is the picture you need to look at carefully. Okay? What you've got is dBSPL and frequency. Now look at what this says here. Influence of vent diameter on the occlusion effect. Now, what is the occlusion effect? Occlusion effect. I hope I've got this in my notes. Let's go. Let's go here. Venting. Let's read about it right here. It's a short, wide hole in the ear mold done to reduce low-frequency amplification. It creates more acoustic mass, allowing the lows to leak out. Let me explain in English. It allows the air trapped behind the hearing aid to communicate with the air outside the hearing aid. So you've increased the acoustic air mass because you've added a vent. And what resonates with mass? Lows. So venting lets the low frequencies out. Venting lets the lows out. And it's done because of the occlusion effect. The larger the vent, vents are measured in millimeters. The bigger the vent, the more the lows go out. The smaller the vent, the less the lows go out. And what are vents for? They are done to reduce the occlusion effect. Now let's write down what the occlusion effect is. I'm going to have you two right here that are attending write this down. Occlusion effect, I'm going to give you two definitions. One definition is your own voice is louder when your ear is plugged. That's definition one. Occlusion effect. Your own voice is louder when your ear is plugged. Got it? Now here's definition number two. Let me know when you're ready. I'll stop sharing, and I'm going to just talk right at you. So, occlusion effect, own voice louder when ear is plugged. Second definition, low frequencies of your voice, the lows of your voice resonate the mass of your skull. This is now giving you the technical definition. The first definition was the lay definition. Your own voice is louder when your ear is plugged. Second definition, low frequencies of your voice resonate the mass of your skull, because lows resonate mass. Got that? Okay. This in turn, as a result, wiggles. Oh, here I was looking for that hearing aid. Guess where it was? On my ear. Great, Ted. I just pulled it off of my ear. I was looking all over for this thing and I had it on me. Anyway, classic. Low frequencies of your voice resonate the mass of your skull, which in turn vibrates the cartilaginous portion of your ear canal, which in turn vibrates the cartilaginous portion of your ear canal. Your ear canal has a bony portion and cartilaginous portion, right? Just like your nose. Look at the top of your nose. The skin covers bone on the top, and it covers cartilage on the bottom. I can wiggle that, but I can't wiggle this, okay? So this, just like your ear canal, is the same. You have a bony portion, and then the outer portion is cartilaginous. So low frequencies of your voice resonate the mass of your skull, which in turn vibrates the cartilaginous portion. Look at my ear, and now it's wiggling. Plugging your ear prevents that resonance from escaping. Plugging your ear prevents that resonance from escaping. That's the occlusion effect. It's a big complaint with hearing aid wearers, huge. Background noise is number one. Occlusion effect is number two. People hate it, okay? You have to use venting to deal with the occlusion effect. All right, so now we'll go back to this picture here in your PowerPoints. Have a look. You see that? Know how to read this. It's very important. Look at frequency. Notice how in the low frequencies, below 1,000 hertz, this is a closed vent, a little bit of an open vent, a 1 millimeter vent, a 2 millimeter vent, a 3 millimeter vent, and an open ear canal. Here's the resonance of your open ear canal. Okay, venting decreases the lows. So who is going to benefit from venting the most? It's going to be this person here. If I go to this slide here, and I'll go to my way to the top here, this guy, look at that slide. He's got good hearing in the low frequencies, poorer hearing in the treble. He's going to benefit with a vent. So the person, because what's the definition of occlusion effect? Low frequencies vibrate or resonate the mass of your skull, which in turn vibrates the cartilaginous portion. Plugging your ear prevents those lows from escaping. So if a person's got good low frequency hearing, you've got to use a vent because he's really going to hear the occlusion effect. The occlusion effect is a low frequency phenomenon. I'm going to stop sharing and let you look at me right here. Now, what I want you to do is hum and plug your good ear. 1, 2, 3. Okay, hum. Now unplug your ear. Plug your ear. It's louder. Now let's do that with the letter S. You don't hear a difference, do you? Say ear plugged, unplugged, plugged, unplugged. No difference. Big difference because is low frequency and is high frequency. Occlusion effect is a low frequency phenomenon. Okay, very important. All right, that's why this picture, that's what this picture is showing you about about venting and what it does for the low frequencies. I'll show you another picture. Here's another picture of what venting does. It cuts out the lows. Look at here. Tiny little millimeter is that thick line. 1 millimeter cuts a bit of lows out. 2 millimeters cuts more lows out. 3 millimeters cuts more lows out. Okay? That's venting. Let's look at filters. We don't have much time, only about 10 minutes left. Here we go. Here's a frequency response of a hearing aid. A typical Joe Blow imaginary hearing aid. Maybe it's this hearing aid here, this little red hearing aid. Whatever, doesn't matter, okay? You've got a bunch of bumps in the frequency response. This is the output. Look what it says, dBSPL output. Frequency along the horizontal. Resonance peaks of an undamped receiver. In English, resonant peaks of a hearing aid. Resonant peaks of, here, I'll put this ear mold on. Resonant peaks of a hearing aid like this. And the receiver, undamped. I'll stop sharing here because filters were put in the ear hook right in front of the receiver. And the receiver is the bottom gold, the mic is the top. They jammed a screen in there and closed it. And they called it damping. It was a filter. And because we did that, what happened? What happened was the peaks went away. They went away. What did filters look like? We don't use them much anymore, but you should know what they are. Look, like a screen. Or like a screen. Like you took a circle out of the screen door or out of your window. And when you put that filter into the ear hook, what it did was it smoothed the frequency response. And I'm going to close our talk on filters with this little discussion, if you will remember with me. Here's what filters do. Look at the peaky frequency response. And look, if I make the screen tighter and tighter and tighter. In other words, when I make the screen coarse, it's not going to smooth the frequency response much. If I make the mesh really tight, it is going to make it's going to really get rid of the peaks. So as I make the screen tighter and tighter and tighter, you can see that all the peaks go away, can't you? Okay? Filters are resistors. Do you remember studying in the first unit we talked about resonance and we talked about impedance? Way back in unit 1. It was even before the decibel. And we talked about resonance is the favorite vibrating frequency of an object, and it's caused by the mass and the stiffness of an object. And so we said mass vibrates with lows, but mass opposes highs. And we said stiffness resonates with highs, but stiffness opposes lows. It doesn't like lows getting through. So we said impedance is the frown, resonance is the smile. And we said a smile is an upside down frown. Remember that? If something resonates with certain frequency, it impedes other frequencies. It likes certain frequencies and it doesn't like other frequencies. We said impedance is caused by 3 things. Opposition due to mass, opposition due to stiffness, and we called those 2 reactance. And what was the third one? Resistance. That way back, impedance equals resistance plus reactance. And reactance is opposition due to mass and opposition due to stiffness. And those 3, put them all together, you've got impedance. Flip it upside down, you've got resonance. Resonance is also, it's all part of this. Impedance is the opposite of resonance. Anyway, filters cause resistance. And resistance is independent of frequency. Doesn't matter. Resistance in any object. So resistance in this cup for passing sound is going to be the same for all frequencies. And that's exactly what happens with filters. Filters cause resistance. And they dampen, look at the screen here, they dampen the peaks wherever the peaks may be. Okay, most of the peaks are in the mid to higher frequencies, so filters tended to dampen the peaks in the mid to higher frequencies, essentially. And now we'll finish. Oh, here's our BTE. Just showing you pictures. Here's your ear hook. Here's the mic. What kind of ear mold would this be? Probably a skeleton. Here's a vent. Okay, off telephone, mic switch, battery compartment. When you opened up the back, just like I showed you, you had this tiny little screws that you could turn with a screwdriver. Here's the internal guts of the hearing aid and its ear hook.
A lot of stuff.
Here's another basic parts of a BTE. Here's the receiver, the mic, the ear hook, the number 13 tubing, ear mold. Location of the filters was usually in the ear hook of the hearing aid or by the receiver, right where my cursor is showing. I've got all these slides. You're going to get all of these in like 5 minutes after this Zoom. I'm pulling this all up on Blackboard, okay? so fear not. Number 13 tubing, that's good old regular ear mold tubing, just like this, typical. The internal diameter is 2 millimeters. If I stop sharing and hold up a piece of paper to you and have a look, here's a number 13 tubing. What I just drew on here, and I drew an arrow, and you can see that what it says, okay, is about 2 millimeters. Internal diameter of number 13 tubing is 2 millimeters. What's the internal diameter of a horn? 3 millimeters. Internal diameter here, look again, 2 millimeters. Internal diameter here, 3 millimeters. Okay, so all these typical tubing of BTEs is number 13. Don't ask me why they call it number 13. Who knows? But the internal diameter is 2 millimeters, whereas in a horn, it's 3. Sometimes tubing doesn't have a horn. Okay, so it's just 2 millimeters all the way through. What you should see, however, okay, now we'll keep moving through here. Number 13 tubing is the open fit BTE. Now look at that. Is that tubing number 13 tubing? Hell no. That's narrower. The internal diameter of open fit BTEs is 0.8 or 0.9 millimeters. Very narrow. So the hearing aid really has to make up for that loss. The hearing aid has to compensate because it's really thin. And what happens when it's really thin? You're going to cut off your highs. You've got a non-electronic acoustic modification. And the manufacturers know that. So they had to really boost the highs coming out of this hearing aid so it could offset the effect of the narrow tubing. Because thin tube BTEs are thin tube BTEs. I'll stop sharing and just show you a picture, show you one right here. Here's a thin tube BTE. Look at the tubing on here compared to the tubing here. Okay? So this is really going to block the passage of high frequencies. So the manufacturers know that. They have to compensate for it. They know it. Thin tube BTEs, a lot, which are all the rage. Everybody's wearing them. Another one is called the receive. Here's open fit. Have a look here. Open fit and the way it would sit in someone's ear canal. And if you wonder what that little thing is here where my cursor is, when I showed you earlier, you know, this little guy, and it has that weird string on the end, okay? That little string on the end is meant to go right in the concha bowl to help hold this all in place. All right? That's why it's there. There's that little, it's kind of just a thing to help hold. And if I hold it up here, you'll see the same thing on here. All right. Next slide. Thin tube effect would cut off your highs. Look at that. 9 millimeter thin tube compared to regular tubing. Receiver in canal. The most popular hearing aid today. Hands down. This is it. It's different from the open fit. The open fit has hollow tubing. The open fit has hollow tubing. Sound goes through the open fit. Okay? But if you now look at receiver in canal, receiver in, oh here, open fit, where's the mic? Here. Where's the receiver? Here. Where does the sound go through? Here. And here's the big, here's the stock tip that fits in your ear. They call that the dome. They often call that the dome. I'll show you, stop sharing and show you the dome here. Okay. You can see all the holes. So this would be meant for a guy with good hearing in the low frequency, moderate loss in the highs. If I ever had put this inside of my ear, I'd twist it in and I'd take that little string and I'd have it sitting in my concha bowl there and you wouldn't even know I had a ding-dong hearing aid in my ear. Okay? That's an open fit, but let's look at a receiver in canal. It's different. The body of the hearing aid looks the same. Oh, look at this. My internet connection is unstable. Oops. Good thing we're nearly done here. Let's look at receiver and canal. There's a wire going through the tube. The receiver is, look at this, in the canal. You see that? That's the difference. Did you in hearing aid components yet?
We've gone over a little bit. But
okay.
So helpful. Yeah.
Good.
This is helpful.
Great. With receiver and canal are more expensive than thin tube. Look at this. The receiver is in the canal. So there's a wire connecting the speaker. The receiver is your speaker. Okay, I don't know why they call it a receiver. I think that's a stupid name. It's a speaker. And the speaker of the hearing aid is in the ear canal itself, right in. Okay? And it's connected to the body of the hearing aid by a wire. So instead of sound going through the tube like thin tube BTEs, the amp is here where my cursor is. The wire is connecting the amp to the speaker, which is situated right in your canal. That's why they call them RICs, receiver and canal. So the speaker is right near your eardrum. You get way better sound, better quality, and they cost more. They are more expensive. Here's a close-up. Have a look. Receiver in. Can you see that there's a wire now inside the tube? Mm-hmm. And a stock dome at the end? Horns, basically. I'm on my second last slide. Look at this picture. Horns increase the highs. But if I talk backward into a horn, I decrease the highs. That would be a reverse horn. So vents, filters, horns, and we looked at open fits, and we looked at receiver in canals. The bigger the horn, the more the highs. Horns aren't used very much today. Of the three acoustic, non-electronic acoustic modifications, of the three, the most one used today is not horns anymore because hearing aids are digital, not filters so much anymore because hearing aids are digital. What's left remaining? Vents. Okay? Count on a question on vents on your final. Know what vents are used still all the time. With RIC hearing aids, with open fit hearing aids. Open fit hearing aids are just hugely vented BTEs. Open fit, that's why they call them open fit. Sometimes they call them thin tube. But open fit basically just means a hearing aid with lots of holes in the mold. Okay, because that's why they call them open fit. It's meant for someone with good hearing in the lows who's really going to pick up the occlusion effect, and someone with poorer hearing in the highs. I'll stop sharing here and ask if you have any questions before we sign off. It is now past our time. How are you doing? Doing okay?
Yeah, yes, I think so. I think they might have went over that this weekend with the hearing aids at lab, but you know, for like me and Lizzie, that we didn't get to go to labs.
Okay.
Did you, Lizzie?
Yeah, I'm not in another audiology class.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, anyway. That's all right. This has all been good. I'm going to now keep my promise and get upload onto Blackboard the notes for this session and the PowerPoints for this session. My apologies for not having it up there. I thought for sure it was. So anyway, I'll get at that. Upload.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
Is there going to be another session next week with different notes too?
We are done.
This is the last class?
This is
This is our last class?
Yes, it is.
It's been a pleasure watching you every week.
Hey, it's been a pleasure having you listen every week and participating. I really enjoy that. For me, it makes or breaks the class. So, cheers. We'll see you later. We'll see you when we look at you.
Okay.
There's something profound. All right. This is your last class in acoustics. It's been a slice.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Adios.
Uh-huh.